in 2014, we got asked to do a 2-month tour as the opening act for probably the most famous artist in the psychedelic music scene called Shpongle. And we went on tour with Shpongle on a bus for like 8 weeks. I'd never been on a tour bus like that before. And, it was like old school style going from city to city. We just had such a good time. Shpongle's so famous that almost all the shows were sold out and some big venues. We went from like people knew us to now we're really on the map. And we started playing all the festivals. The international thing picked up for us, and we definitely rode a wave for quite a few years that was really strong. And in 2020, before the whole COVID thing happened, we had the most bookings that we ever had booked for a year, like in advance. We had almost every weekend in 2020 booked. We had a whole European tour that summer booked. It was our biggest year by far, the most money we were going to make ever in one year. And then, COVID happened and everything was just over.
Hello, and welcome back to the MO Podcast, where we dive into the minds of people shaping art and culture. I'm Joey Flores, here as always with my co-host Jonathan Neal. Today we are delighted to chat with a dear friend of mine who has spent the last 3 decades pioneering and elevating the global electronic music scene, Treavor Moontribe. Treavor is a founding member of Moontribe, the legendary underground collective that has been throwing full moon desert gatherings since the early 90s, influencing an entire generation of DJs and electronic music lovers. He's also one half of Desert Dwellers, a globally recognized electronic duo that fuses deep bass, world music, and psychedelic soundscapes, which has earned him appearances at global events from Lightning in a Bottle to world-renowned Coachella Festival. With a career spanning over 25 years, Treavor has played an instrumental role in shaping underground transformational festival culture, sharing stages with the biggest names in electronic music, and touring worldwide. He's produced and remixed tracks for major labels, collaborated with artists across genres, and helped redefine how electronic music can be both deeply immersive and spiritually resonant. We're excited to dive into his journey, how he helped build an underground movement that went global, his creative process, and where he sees the future of electronic music heading. Treavor, welcome to the MO Podcast.
Sounds so fancy.
We try to do good with our intros. So Treavor, you've been part of the electronic music scene for over 30 years. How did you first get into DJing and producing?
Well, I was in bands and stuff in high school playing guitar, and my friends and I really liked having psychedelic journeys together from time to time in those days, and got into psychedelic music like Pink Floyd and whatnot, all the classic stuff. And then in my senior year in high school, I was turned on to the rave scene in Los Angeles and discovered that there was a whole thing going on around psychedelic culture that was based in a different kind of music than I had known. And once I heard acid house music and underground techno music, I was instantly hooked and quickly bought synthesizers and drum machines and stuff, and started going to raves and started making my own electronic music, and then started DJing. And we started throwing full moon parties in the desert outside of LA in June of 1993. And we named ourselves Moontribe. And those parties didn't take too long to catch on. And the rest is history. That's really where it all started.
Moontribe is still happening today, am I right?
It is. It is. I attend from time to time when I'm in the States and it happens to line up with a gathering. I don't help organize anymore. I live in a different country and all that. So but yeah, it's pretty wild. The 32-year anniversary is in June, and it's still going really strong and still very much what it was, how it started, just underground, word of mouth, a non-commercial event. And yeah, it's pretty amazing that's still going.
Do you feel like after all these years that Moontribe has maintained its authenticity?
Yes, I mean it's changed like anything would. And in some ways it's still the same, and maybe for better or worse. So yeah, I think the reason that it's survived is because it has remained true to its original sort of code, I guess, which is to be a non-commercial event with no promotion. There's no website that you can find out where the gathering will be at. There's Facebook groups and stuff, but if you were to post information about a gathering on a Facebook group, you would be ostracized. I mean, you would be like destroyed by the people on there, and banned from the group. So you have to be on an email list to know where the gatherings are going to be. It's kind of like, invite people that you'd invite to your house sort of situation. So yeah, it has stuck to its roots, and I think that's a rarity in our world. Moontribe could have become a commercial thing, could have become, probably famous and whatnot, but chose not to, and that's quite unique in our world today.
Yeah, for sure. I want to give a little context for how we met, and then that will lead into a question that I'm really interested to get your take on. But so we met via Craigslist when you ended up moving into our semi-legendary house in Venice, California. And shortly after that, I went to see you for the first time, DJing at an after-hours event. And when I arrived, there was this other DJ playing. And I think, to be honest, that the music that he played was pretty similar to the same genre that you were going to be playing, which at the time was a lot of psytrance and what have you. And it was good, but the dance floor was pretty empty and the energy level was like, let's just say, sort of mid. And then shortly after you came on, and I remember like the whole venue just like transforming within like minutes. The dance floor was like totally full, place was raging, energy level completely changed. And so I'm kind of curious, like, can you explain to me what you think makes a DJ great versus just good or average? And how did two DJs who are playing a similar genre of music have such a difference in impact, ability, and sort of like crowd reaction?
It's a good question. Obviously, it's a very personal answer to give. I think each person will say what they think makes a DJ great. For some people, it's just the music they play. They don't really care how they put it together or whatever. If they're playing the songs they want to hear, they could smash tracks together in any which way they want, and people are going to be all about it. And there is a thing that I always come back to, which is, in my mind, there's a difference between being popular and being good or being great. Sometimes people, in my opinion, get very popular and they're not that great. Sometimes people are really great and they don't get popular. So they don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes they do. For me, I've always felt that DJs that put time into finding songs that work very well together, that have a harmonic resonance together, that fit in key, that fit in energy, that fit in a flow of a set, is what makes a DJ great, in my opinion. And I've always worked really hard on my sets and trying to make sure that each mix is going to be really nice and that they're going to have a really good flow together and that the timing of them is right, the phrasing of them is right. And I have to remember where to do that. Modern technology makes it easier to remember where to do that. I think when we first met, I was still playing on CDs, and before that I was playing on vinyl. So it was much more about memory then. You had to know. You didn't have a little cue point to look at on your computer screen or on the CDJ screen. Like now it's very much easier. And I like that. I like that they've made it much easier. But for me, I just feel like there are people who hear music a certain way and that listen to a song and go, oh yeah, I want to find something that is kind of like this, that will fit with that song or whatever. And that's always been my approach to DJing. And after knowing a lot of other DJs, thousands of other DJs, I really have only found a few that think of it that way. And some of them are able to do that without even really thinking about it. And I'm like, wow, I'm mind boggled at them. They're on another level, and then there's some that don't do that at all. And I find that their sets leave me, kind of not really enjoying it so much because the track to track selection isn't great, even if the songs themselves are really good. And some of those DJs are super famous. So it doesn't really, like, my perspective on it doesn't really translate to the world at large, I don't think, because, there are tons of DJs that don't musically mix that are super famous. So I don't know how many people out in the audience actually notice those sort of things, but that's been my approach all along.
I went to this festival outside of Oaxaca City for Dia de los Muertos, and my friend and I we were just like, this DJ is horrible. I mean, it was like so crazy, but he would constantly, you'd have those moments where it's building up, right? So it's getting like higher and higher. And then instead of just going to that big like drop or whatever that was going to make like the whole place go nuts, he would just like go back to something like lower energy all out of nowhere. It was awful. It was so awful. And I just sat here thinking like, how is this guy booked for this like fairly, notable festival outside of Oaxaca? And like, I mean, it was one of the worst DJing experiences I've ever heard of. And for that exact reason, right? It's like, he just like, it just went nowhere constantly. It's like, he just like never took the set to any new place.
Going nowhere, DJ sets. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually funny YouTube videos that are like the drop that goes to nothing, and it's like there's massive buildup and then it just goes into like a kick drum, or something, just like nothing else, and it's pretty funny.
Supercut of anticlimactic moments.
It's like they do it, and like there's videos that go on for like an hour, they're just these buildups and then it goes to nothing and then the buildup starts again, and it's really funny.
There must be some audience for this, like some like really depressive folks who just like need the world be reflected back to them as continuously thwarted or something like that.
There's actually a video that's like, I don't know how many hours it goes, but it goes for hours and hours and hours and hours. And it takes you a minute to realize that like what's happening, because it's just the DJ there and he's just like doing this thing, and like nothing changes. It just stays that. And he like barely changes the EQ and like, and like, but that's all that happens. And like after a few minutes, you're like, what the hell? And you fast forward like 2 hours, on it or something. It's the same thing. It's a really good one.
So you were playing other, sort of what we call analog, guitar and things like that when you were younger. When I met you, I mostly knew about your DJing. You were also working for In Grooves at that time, but like I guess the first time I really knew that you were focusing a lot more on music that you produced, I felt like when you joined and co-founded Desert Dwellers, but I'm imagining you were creating and producing music well before then. Like, what can you talk about, like the balance between your DJing versus music production, sort of like what you were doing leading up to founding Desert Dwellers?
Well, Desert Dwellers actually founded long before I met you, but we didn't start touring the project until like 2011, 2012. Mostly because we didn't really realize that there was a market for it. Desert Dwellers was like a side project that myself and Amani Friend had started. And we just, last year was 25 years of Desert Dwellers. So we started making music together in like 99, and we were making like house music and techno music. And then we decided to start making some chill out music, more down tempo stuff. And we called that Desert Dwellers because of the desert events that I was doing. Amani's from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the desert there. So that was the name we came up with. And that project kind of went in different directions for a while. We were on and off because we've only lived in the same city together once over those 25 years for like a couple of years. I lived in Santa Fe, actually, when I left LA. When we met, yes, I was working for In Grooves. I had a day job, and it was kind of a difficult time. I felt like I had failed my music career at that point because I had to have a day job. I wasn't able to support myself with my music. And before I started working at In Grooves, for a while there in the 90s and stuff, I was supporting myself with my music, with Moontribe and DJing and stuff. And then the rave scene sort of fell apart in the early 2000s with the Rave Act that our lovely former President Joe Biden wrote and passed in 2000 that scared off a lot of promoters, and a lot of us lost all our jobs. So I went broke and I was living with friends. I didn't even have a place of my own for a while. And then I moved to San Francisco for an opportunity there, and I got the job at In Grooves, which I was grateful for at the time because I was hella broke and really in a bad place. So I was still producing music through those years and releasing stuff. We did some Desert Dweller stuff. I had other stuff going on, but I was tired. I was working all day, and then by the time I'd finished my job, I would have a little bit of energy, but I was kind of in a funk those years. And when I moved in with you after moving back to LA, the DJ thing was on and off, and the music production thing was on and off, and I was still working, and so it was tough. It was tough to keep going with the music. But I stuck with it, and I knew that, well, I at least hoped that something would work out with it and it would get back to that point. And that's when we realized that there was a whole scene for kind of down-tempo music that had become quite strong in the US and was growing internationally. And that's when we realized that Desert Dwellers could actually get gigs. And we booked ourselves at first for a few gigs, and then a booking agent that was working in the scene came to us and was like, "Hey, I love what you guys do." And we were kind of his first, more well-known artist that he was representing. And so he put a lot of effort into us. And luckily I was able to quit my job and move forward with just touring. And from that point on, it's been a wild ride, up and down. Of course, the music industry is up and down, and especially when you're not like super famous. And we've kind of always been in that in-between world. Like I always say we're like not a big fish in a small pond, but like a shark in a swimming pool or something like that. Like we're not playing arenas, but we're not playing for 40 people either. There's that in-between world that exists for music acts these days that maybe wasn't as big of a thing when we were all growing up in the 80s and 90s. It was, if you weren't signed to a big label, you weren't doing shit. But now you can be in that in-between world. And so yeah, my balance between DJing and making music is they're kind of hand in hand. I sometimes like doing one more than the other, but I don't actually do a lot of DJing when I'm not DJing out. When I'm home, I'm just making music all the time. And my CDJs and my DJ software just kind of collect dust. I don't actually ever touch them at home unless I have a gig, and then I'm just working on my set and quickly getting through it. But yeah.
Looking back at so you kind of now explained a bit of the how it started, went from good to not so good to good again. What since you stopped doing any grooves or working on anything besides just being a professional musician, like what have been sort of the pivotal moments, both ones that you felt like kind of took things to another level, like how did you end up at Coachella, for example, but like, what are some of the things that happened that were sort of monumental moments in your career, but also maybe some of the lows? I mean, like, you kind of alluded to like the ebbs and flows of a career. What have been some of the things that you were like, man, this just took our opportunities to like a whole new place? But then what have been some maybe of the setbacks that that also kind of happened where you thought, oh shit, is this going to keep going? Or I mean, like, were there any moments like that as well?
Yeah, it's been a lot of both. Right now is pretty low moment. The Desert Dwellers project, the scene for it has declined a lot. Both Amani and I have been focused on our other music projects for quite a while too, and COVID just, was a crushing thing for the music industry. So, last year we had 3 gigs all summer. And, that was, pretty devastating for me financially. I was in a very bad place. Luckily, last year was our 25-year anniversary, and we did a big fall tour that helped me, make enough money to where I can survive through this winter where we're not touring. And then, for the rest of this year, we really don't have that many gigs. So I've been really focused on getting myself DJ gigs and pushing my solo projects and trying to establish those more so that in the coming years, as we do less Desert Dwellers, I can still have success, because the last thing I want to do is be begging for Ingrooves to rehire me or something like that. But I think that, in 2012, when we started touring again, the scene was so strong. And in 2014, we got asked to do a 2-month tour as the opening act for probably the most famous artist in the psychedelic music scene, called Shpongle. And we went on tour with the Shpongle on a bus for like 8 weeks, 7 weeks or something like that. And I'd never been on a tour bus like that before. And, it was like old school style, going from city to city. And we had a driver and everything. It was really, really fun. When we went into it, we were like, is this going to be great? Or are we all going to want to kill each other? Like, how's this going to be, And we all got along so well. We just had such a good time. Shpongle's so famous that almost all the shows were sold out, and some big venues. And we had, we went from like people knew us to now we're really on the map. And we started playing all the festivals. The international thing picked up for us, and we definitely rode a wave for quite a few years that was really strong. And in 2020, before the whole COVID thing happened, we had the most bookings that we ever had booked for a year, like in advance. We had almost every weekend in 2020 booked. We had a whole European tour that summer booked. It was our biggest year by far, the most money we were going to make ever in one year. And then, COVID happened and everything was just over. At first when COVID hit, we thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a few months or something like that. And it just kept going and going and going. And obviously we weren't the only ones negatively affected by that. If anything, we got off good. We have a pretty solid brand, and we were able to continue to sell merch, and we were able to do online shows, and we were able to bring in money and get some stimulus checks and whatever. We're a corporation, so we were able to get some extra stimulus from the government, and it wasn't nearly what we were gonna make, but it was enough to keep us going. I moved out of LA immediately because I was living in a really nice house in LA at the time that was just not affordable without those gigs. We moved to Colorado for a year, and then we decided to just leave the country, went to Costa Rica, and ended up here in Guatemala where we live now. But, I live in a third world country. I know that term is not appropriate anymore or something like that. I don't know what the hell people developing country, whatever. I just think it's a great country. And but I pay like less than half the price to live in a really nice house here. And I pay, half the price for food and everything that I would to live in LA or anywhere else in the States. And that is keeping me alive right now because I don't have a lot of gigs, things have declined. And, I've got to be careful with my money again, which is a different experience than I'd had for the last like 12 years. But it's fine. I'm also finding myself with a lot of extra time, and I'm home a lot, and I've made more music in the last year than I made in the last like 6 years before then. I completed my first solo album that's not released yet, but I'm hoping to release at some point this year. I've got 2 record labels of my own started that are crushing it, that are doing really well for me and starting to lead to me getting more gigs and whatnot. So it's been a super productive time, and I've really utilized that space that I've been given by not being on the road all the time. So I hope to balance those worlds. I hope to get more gigs so that I can survive a bit easier, but also I don't want to go back to the like full on touring that we were doing because I really do want to be home and I want to be able to make music and be productive, and not touring is really the only way for me to do that. Touring is hard work. Yeah.
Would you jump on a bus again if the opportunity presented itself and you're going to be on the road for 3 or 4 months or something? I mean, is it still fun for you at this age, or that's changed now?
I don't know. Those opportunities, they're not really there for almost anyone right now, unless they're like a big band or something like that. And if I would take pretty much any really great opportunity, I'm that kind of person these days. In my younger years, I turned down a lot of opportunities because, it didn't fit my moral code or whatever. But if a good opportunity arose for me right now to go on a tour and it was with the right artist that was going to put me in front of new people and a lot of people and all that, sure, I would do it.
Tell us about the solo album. What's different about it from Desert Dwellers? I mean, like what can we expect from your solo release?
Honestly, the solo album is so different than anything I've ever made. When I play it for people, they're like, a lot of times they can't believe that I made it. It's almost pop. It's got some rock vibes. It's kind of emo. I sing on one of the tracks. There's vocalists on almost every track on the album. It's more song-structured music, shorter songs. There's no DJ music on it at all. And there's not one, DJ focused song on the album. I don't know, it's hard to compare it to anything. I took influence from a lot of different people, but it was also, most of it was music that I didn't really go into most of the songs with a certain intention. They kind of just turned into what they turned into on their own as time went on. And I found myself working with a friend who's a singer, and his way of singing is so good, and his melodic ideas are so good that really helped me finish the songs. I would give him like my basic ideas, like the basic grooves and the bass lines and the little melodies that I had going already. And then he would record all these vocals on it, and that led it to turn into the songs that they turned into. And that was a really awesome experience for me because with vocalists, I'd kind of worked in different ways before. So yeah, I'll send you it and you can tell me what you think about it. It's really different. It's really unique, and I'm trying to find the right record label for it because I feel like if I were to just release it, it's not going to get any attention at all, because the Desert Dwellers fans, maybe some of them will like it, but a lot of them probably won't be into it. And I really feel like it needs to get into a different group of people. So I'm starting to shop it to labels. I've been making videos for all the songs too. So it's 10 songs and only 2 of them don't have videos at this point. So I'm working on the last 2 videos. And yeah, it's a very unique project, but it was the most fulfilling music that I've made ever. So for me, it was just really great. And I've already started working on like the next album for the project. I don't even know what I'm going to name it. Is it Treavor Moontribe? Is it something else? I don't even know. That's why I hope to find the right label that can, give me some guidance on that and be like, yeah, no, we want to release it as Treavor Moontribe. We don't care that it's different. Or, yeah, you need to put this out as a different name. This is going to be pointless to put out as Treavor Moontribe. And I've kind of gone back and forth. Like, I think I have that mentality. And then I'm like, well, fuck everyone, this is me. This is music that I made. Like, I don't care what people think. Like, it's not like I have millions of fans begging me to make a new techno track anyways, so what does it matter? But at the same time, I want the album to do well. That's why I haven't released it yet. I want it to be in the right place, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe it's going to flop. Maybe it's going to be great. I don't know. I think the music is great. People that I've played it for have expressed that they really like it and feel that it's great too. But yeah, it's very different.
Do you feel like it's an extension of the music that you'd been making in the kind of electronic psychedelic genre, or does it feel to you like a real break, a real switch in terms of your activities?
There's a few tracks on there that definitely with what I've done, but as a whole, I would say it's a very big break. It's very different. I never made music like that before. I'm influenced by a lot of sort of electronica, pop electronica, rockish kind of stuff. There's this in-between world of music out there that, like, Trent Moeller, David August, Robot Cop, and then there's a lot of obscure artists, even Bonobo and stuff like that are just like, they're electronic, but there's vocalists and they're singing, and Roy Scott and stuff like that. So I do feel like there's a lot of those things in there, but then it doesn't really sound like any of them either. So yeah, I would say it's mostly quite the break from what I've done.
What do you think precipitated that? Just your opportunity to have some time to dig in? Does it feel like when we first started talking, you were sort of mentioning some of the classic psychedelic bands and music from the 80s, let's say, or Pink Floyd or something like that. Does it feel something like maybe a return to sort of an earlier mode of music consumption for you? I'm curious about what you think precipitated the break.
Well, I mean, there's always been a love in me for what is like good pop or good, rock or whatever, in my opinion. But this album isn't really psychedelic. Some people have told me, wow, it's really psychedelic. And I was like, really? Because I don't really feel like it's super psychedelic. It's not bland or not like not trippy in any way, but I wouldn't say it's like a psychedelic album. So I think that, like I was saying, like the songs just kind of, they wrote themselves, and the vocal thing kind of started on accident with it in a way. I had started a song, and it was like just like a chord progression and a very simple thing. But I remember we were living in Costa Rica, and I was like, God, this track, I really think this piece needs vocals. Like, it needs some singing in it. And I have a friend, Veda, who is a great poet, and I saw some poetry she had written online, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So I asked her if I could use it in a song, and she was very happy about that, and I was grateful. But I didn't even have a microphone in my studio in Costa Rica, because I hadn't sang since I was in elementary school or something. When I was in choir, I was a good singer when I was a kid, but your voice changes, and if you don't keep singing, it's not as easy, right? And so I haven't really considered myself a singer in a long time. I still don't. I remember telling my wife, I was like, you know what? I'm going to record vocals on this track myself. And she was like, no, but our neighbor had this really shitty microphone that is like a $20 mic that she bought at like a toy store for, that, and had like this little speaker on it because she wanted to sing herself. And I was like, I'm going to go down to the neighbors and grab that microphone. And I told my wife, you watch, I'm going to sing on this song, and I'm going to turn my terrible voice into something great with auto tune and whatever. And so I took the pocket work with the song and I recorded it. And then I tuned my voice and pitched it up an octave and tuned it and did all these effects and put all these robot sounds and made it all trippy. And then I showed my wife and she was like, what the fuck? She was like, that sounds great. I was like, that's so cool. And so I ended up re-recording it with a good microphone because that recording wasn't going to cut it. But so the song that I sing on sort of just happened. And then I started working on the other songs and I was like, I feel like this needs vocals too. And then I discovered my buddy Sam is a great singer that I had no idea about. We'd been hanging out. He was like, my good friend's boyfriend. And they were like, one morning, they were like, you should listen. She was like, you should listen to his music. And they put it on. And I was like, what the hell? This is so good. And so I asked him to start singing on some of these songs. And like I was saying, he brought in this whole vocal thing that, only really good singers know how to do, which is, writing good melodies and going from a chorus to a bridge and whatnot, like real song structure that I've had been out of since, forever. So yeah, the style of music and the songs and everything, like I said, it wasn't really my intention in the beginning to do something like what happened with the album. It was just how the songs ended up going. And I hadn't made music like that in a long time and maybe almost ever. There was always sort of I'm going to make a song like this or I'm going to make a song like that. It's always inspired by something. I'm not really that original, but this I feel is very original, which is something that I was really happy about in the end.
Do you think I guess maybe this is a multi-part question here, but what do you think? Do you think some of your best stuff is made through collaboration? Do you find that like just when you're by yourself and working on something and it's only your input, do you find that some of those tracks are some of your favorites, or do you find that usually it takes collaboration with other people for you to like get more out of it? And then I guess like second part of the question is sort of like, what do you think makes a great collaboration? And like maybe what do you bring versus what Amani brings to, for example, Desert Dwellers? Just kind of talk about your process when other people are involved.
Well, with this album, I really liked how ultimately it was up to me how the album was going to go, and the final product was going to be up to me solely. That helped me keep it original and keep it going in the direction that I wanted it to go. But without the collaborations, without working with the vocalists that I worked with, and without some of the other people that I worked with on it, especially the mix engineer and the mastering engineer, then there's no chance it would be what it is. It's not, it would be nothing of what it is without those collaborations. And, I've told Sam and I've told other people that, without learning about him as a singer and having him do what he did with the album, I don't know even if what those songs would even be, if I would even finish them. So yeah, collaboration I think is everything for me. I get songs done on my own sometimes, and sometimes they're really good, and sometimes I'm just like, whatever, I don't even like them. But yeah, I think for me, collaboration is where I've been at my best with music.
What do you think? I mean, I've been fortunate. You, Tom. We had our band, and I felt like we just had a really great time working together, and like both brought like fun ideas to the project, and like in the startup world, I saw these guys speak once who had built a really big company. They said the key to working really well together was strong opinions loosely held, which I thought was just a really amazing way to sort of summarize like how good people can come together. What do you think is like, yeah, like how do you approach a collaboration? Like for me, collaborating on art is like, it's really difficult, right? Like, I mean, it can be awesome and super fun and beautiful, but, art is such a personal thing, right? So like, how do you maybe like with Amani, like how do you resolve disagreements, or like what do you guys even have disagreements, or do you just like see it so eye to eye that things are always really smooth when you're working together? Like what does a good collaboration feel like to you as it's happening?
Sorry, a helicopter just went by there. I hope you guys didn't get too much of that.
I didn't even hear it.
A helicopter path. Well, I've collaborated with a lot of different people over the years, and each collaboration is different, and each dynamic between people is very different. Obviously, the most I've done is with Amani with Desert Dwellers, and Amani and I are like really polar opposites as people. I grew up in LA and East LA with, in the gang days of the 80s and 90s, and just with like violent people and kind of intensity. And Amani grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, went to like, you know, a really nice private school. His parents are very spiritual. His dad, you know, his dad was like, and mom were like crystal dealers, not meth, like actual crystals, you know, like they were like a crystals shop in Santa Fe, you know, like I didn't even see a quartz crystal till I was like 20 or something. So, you know, we're just very different. And that I think is what has made Desert Dwellers. And sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes we're just not getting along. Sometimes we just want to, you know, punch each other and are just, you know, really fed up with each other. And then other times it's just working really well. But I think that opposite energy that we have is what's made the music so interesting, because our music on our own is very different. His music is much softer on its own, and my music is so much heavier and edgier. And I think that those two things combine with Desert Dwellers, and that's why it's worked. You have these kind of softer melodies and vocals and things like that, and instruments, and then you have this kind of heavier beat and heavier bass and stuff. And that has been sort of the balance of that project. But when you have a project that's gone on for, you know, now we're entering our 26th year, and it's had its own ebbs and flows. Like we haven't been making a lot of music together for these past several years. We have been more focused on our own projects and whatnot. So in many ways, we're kind of like a, you know, an old married couple, and like, you know, that just doesn't want to touch each other for a while. They just get away from me. And so we do have to kind of stay away from each other for once in a while. Like I think the you know, touring less often, it's hit my pocketbook in ways that I don't like, but it's also given some space that I do like. So yeah, collaborations are tricky. They require a certain amount of letting go and a certain amount of acceptance of things that you maybe don't really like about another person. And when you work with somebody for so long, you know, those things are going to obviously come up. And so like, you know, if I collaborate with somebody on one song, you're not going to really learn those things about a person unless they're just, unless the situation just doesn't work out well or something like that, and you just don't work with them again. There's a big difference between, you know, long-term collaboration and working with somebody on a song or two or something like that.
If you could snap your fingers and collaborate with anybody in the world, who would you love to work with?
Man, I don't even know. Gosh, there's a lot of great musicians out there. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't really have somebody in mind.
Can you tell me about somebody who remixed one of your tracks that you thought like did a killer job, and like what was so cool about it?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually over the years. I think recently the artist from the UK, Cosmic Trigger, did a couple remixes of us, and he's kind of Shpongle's protege. He has been working under Shpongle's tutelage for quite a few years and been kind of his in-studio assistant for quite a few years. So in a way, his sound is similar, but he's got his own flavor. And I think of all the people that have done remixes of us for the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, that his have been the most interesting. They took it into a direction that I didn't expect. And a lot of artists that remix, they do a good job, but you get what you expected to get from them. So yeah, I would say that Cosmic Trigger has done some pretty cool remixes of us.
Is that what you think defines a good remix, is doing something really quite different and unique with it, as opposed to just, you know, like mild adjustments or just making it your own sound or whatever it is? Is that the kind of the key, is to like be surprising?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I don't mind if it's something that we expected, as long as it's, you know, really well done. Like sometimes that's what you want. Like you hire an artist because of their sound, and then if they give you something that doesn't sound like that at all, I mean, if it's really cool, then fine, that's great. But if it's like, you know, this isn't what we wanted, that's not good either. I just think with what he delivered, it was, you know, really psychedelic and really different, and they've been the tracks that have gotten the best response in our sets when we play out. And so I look at that as well. Like people are really like, wow, what is this? You know, and I really look for that when we're playing a remix out, like the ones that really get the crowd going, because that's our bread and butter, is our shows. So yeah, that's important.
This is I've just learned two things, which would love to hear more about. But one, I never would have expected that you would like play someone else's remix of your music at your gig. I would have always thought maybe they're playing that at their gig. So that's
Like, cool. Yeah, yeah.
Sure,
No, I
but
mean, we rely on the remixes for our shows. I mean, especially in a time when we're not really making a lot of our own tracks and we haven't, I mean, Desert Dwellers, I think in the last couple of years have made three original songs or something like that. You know, we've done our own remixes and we've had a fair amount of remixes done of us, but we haven't made a lot of original music for the past few years. So without those remixes and even our own tracks from our solo projects, which we'll sometimes play in Desert Dweller sets, we're literally on super repeat mode. And as a DJ and as somebody who always wants to be playing new music, that's really hard for me. Like I'm not the kind of person that likes to be on repeat. And I've criticized other artists in our scene for being on repeat that just play the same set for so long. I'm like, oh my God, how can you possibly do that and not be bored out of your mind? So without those remixes, I mean, we're on repeat to a point that I'm already upset about it, but we're not repeating our sets like that. You know, like maybe on a tour we might play the same set for a month or something like that. But by the end of that month, I'm already changing it because I'm just so bored. And so the remixes and our remixes and whatnot, that keeps our sets fresh and interesting. Without that, it's gonna, it's gonna drive me nuts.
Is part of that allow you to track audience now too? I mean, given that so much of the way that the music is listened to and distributed online comes with so many analytics in terms of who's downloading, where it's being downloaded, where it's being listened to, how it's being used out in the world. Does that give you like advanced insight into fans and people who are sort of gaining interest in the music, or if someone remixes a track and it gets distributed someplace and all of a sudden you see, new interest popping up in new geographies and new locales? Is that part of the mix of what's going on?
No,
Oh,
actually, for us. And the reason why is because, especially with Spotify, it's when you go on an artist's Spotify account, it shows what's popular, right? For us, what that shows is tracks that we made like 20 years ago, because those tracks have been sitting in playlists. Like some of the music that was made as Desert Dwellers back then was made for these yoga teachers. Amani got hired as to do these projects, making music for these yoga teachers DVDs at the time. And we released those as Desert Dwellers albums, even though I wasn't a part of most of it because Desert Dwellers was just a studio project and we never really expected to tour it. So it's hard for us to look at what's popular in our streaming and downloads and say that's what we should play, because that's not necessarily what like fans are listening to. Those tracks just happen to be in these playlists that yoga teachers play every single day in their yoga classes. So they've been streamed millions and millions of times. But that doesn't really show who we are now, where we're at, what we're doing, or anything like that. It's like such a skewed perspective
hmm.
of who we are and what we're about musically. So once in a while, we play those songs in our sets as like a nostalgia thing or something like that, but they're not really dance floor sets, and we're looking for what's going to make the dance floor go. So no, we don't really pay attention to those analytics as far as what we're going to play in our sets. We
Hmm.
mostly play our bigger dance floor tracks and new songs in our sets, hoping that people will like those and then go and listen to them online or whatever. But yeah, we can't really rely on that to guide us too much.
the other thing you said a little bit ago that piqued my interest was that you said when we hire someone to do a remix, like I just assumed people hear a track and they're like, this is dope and I want to remix this. I didn't know you would like actively seek out someone to remix a track for you. Like, is that how it works? Like, can you explain a little bit like how did some of these remixes happen when they're more intentional like that?
Yeah, most of the remixes that have been done of us have been us going to certain artists and asking them to remix it. Sometimes people come to us and say, hey, we want to remix your track. And if we like their music and we think that they're a good fit for it, then sure, why not? There's times when people come to us and want to remix us and we just don't feel like they're a good fit and we'll decline their offer. But for the most part, we seek out our remixers, and that's how it works with my labels as well. Like for every track that I sign to my label, I try to find good remixers for those tracks. And with Desert Dwellers, it's usually pretty easy because we are having a lot of artists that we know or that we've played with do the remixes. So when we reach out to them, unless they're too busy or just not interested, a lot of the times it's like, yeah, sure, we'd like to do that or whatever. With the labels is more difficult because I'm going after artists that I don't even know, that I've never met. It's like cold call sales, and you're like, hi, can I get you to remix this track? Do you like it or whatnot? And I would say for every yes that I get, I probably get 5 to 6 or maybe even more no's or just no response, and that never feels good. It sucks when people don't respond at all. Like they could just say, hey, thanks for reaching out, but I'm not interested or whatever. But a lot of people just don't reply at all if they're not interested. That's our modern world we live in. Instead of saying no, they just don't reply. But yeah, we ask most of the people that do the remixes to do them, and we want them to do the remix because we like what they're doing.
Well, I gotta say, 1 out of 6 or 7 saying yes is actually a really impressive conversion rate. I wouldn't be too upset about that. Excuse me. I want to give you an opportunity to rant a bit, having lived with you. I know that you like to do that sometimes. How do you feel what is the evolution of electronic music over the past few decades been like for you to witness, and what are some things that have happened that you really dislike about the way that the electronic scene has either the scene or more so like the music itself? Like what have you seen that you're just like I just you just wish that it hadn't gone that direction?
Oh man, this could be like it could go on for days. I'm very opinionated, as you know. I don't share my opinions about specific artists or anything like that, especially publicly, because we're all artists and we all doing what we do, and we're all trying to get by. And I respect anybody that's working their ass off and doing it because it's hard, and it takes a lot of good timing and luck and everything and a sound and everything to succeed. Like it's not just one thing. Right now in electronic music in general, I feel like the stupid has won. And that's in a lot of things, like you turn on any TV thing, Netflix or whatever, and there's just so much stupid shit out there and it's so popular. And that's how it is in music, like it's like the entire world decided that they are just going to be alcoholics and cocaine addicts, and the music is reflecting that or something. It's just weird. Like the psychedelic, interesting, abstract music is so unpopular and super cheesy, dumb as possible, lowest common denominator crap is huge. And it's just mind-boggling to me, and I hate it. And that's because I'm just like a psychonaut that likes trippy music and likes music that makes me think deeper and challenges me. And I find that music out there still, luckily. I'm finding enough for my DJ sets and whatnot, but it's crazy how unpopular it is. And um, DJs and musicians and producers that were making beautiful, deep, lovely music for so long are making absolute garbage that is like just purely for money. And that's fine, go make your money, but I don't like it, like and it's really a strange moment. I saw a video the other day, and it's like I don't want to say anything about any individuals, like I said, but there's a DJ and they hide their face. So I don't even know who the hell they are, but it's like this girl that wears a horse mask, like she has like this horse face and plays like super cheesy, like I don't even know what the fuck it is, like what is this music? And then they pan to the crowd and it's like, 20,000 people and they're all just like, yes, this is so great. And I'm like, what the fuck has happened to our world? What the fuck is this? Like this is what is popular, like what the hell? And so I was like joking, and I'm like, I'm gonna be DJ Horsecock and I'm gonna wear a half horse, half chicken mask, like that's what it's come to. You gotta have this like stupid gimmick, and you can literally gimmick your way and pay your way into fame. And instead of it being like Milli Vanilli when we grew up and like, fuck those guys, they're fake, like their career was over, man, when people recognized that they were faking it. Now, the fake it till you make it, people are making it, man, and everyone loves it. And it's baffling to me. And now we have this whole AI thing and people are worried about it. And I don't really worry about it because I'm just like, man, whatever, like what the fuck am I going to do? Worry myself to death? But like people are going to eat up fake AI music. they're going to love it. They're going to buy it. They're going to put all their energy into it because they don't care. They're buying all this fake it till you make it crap. I mean, I know plenty of musicians that are super popular. They don't make any of their music. They used ghostwriters, 100. They're paying a shitload of money for their Spotify followers. They're paying for all the playlisting they get. They're paying for everything. It's just totally not authentic. And people eat it up. They're super popular and nobody cares. And they can come right out and say it. Some of them do. Yeah, I use ghostwriters. I don't even make my music, and nobody cares. Lip sync your way to the top. Nobody gives a shit. And that is really fucking crazy to me. So yeah, there's my Trev talk. The stupid has won.
I don't, I'm not an expert in any genre, and but like I know less about pop, and these days I don't, but I think that I feel like that's true across genres, right? Like, I see these like, I don't know if you call it a mashup or whatever, but like on Instagram or whatever, where they're showing what did hip hop used to be like versus what is it like now, and it's like, you're watching like Dog and all these guys doing like super cool shit back in the day, and now like just the lyrics are just dumb as hell, and like and this is like the song that's like topping the charts, and it could not be less. I don't know. I mean, it sounds exactly like what you're describing. It's just that stupid has won, and that like the quality, the bar for what people care about in terms of like lyrical content, rhyme patterns and things that make hip hop interesting, like don't really matter anymore. It's kind of crazy.
It's a strange time, and you know, I I've never been one of those people that like doesn't want to discover the new thing and doesn't want to discover what, the hot new thing or whatever like that. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, in my 50s or 60s, and 'cause now I'm 50 and I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh yeah, kids these days or something like that, because that's not how I think. I want to find the new cool shit. I want to find the 20-year-old that's, making the most mind-blowing music out there. I want to be blown away by young people. And I don't know if something's being put in the water or what's happening or the air, but yeah, like really painfully dumb stuff is extraordinarily popular right now. And it's really bizarre to me, and I don't understand it. I don't know why. And I think the one thing that like is I'll meet people that like these things sometimes and I'll ask them why, and they almost always have the same answer. And that is they'll say, it's fun. And I guess like from time to time, something really stupid or something really dumb, I think is fun, And so I get that a little bit, like, because that has happened to me where something's just so dumb, but I'm like, that's funny, or I like it, or for some reason. So, I guess there's a real reason for it for people, but yeah, I hope that at least a balance could be found in there where, really interesting stuff can also become more popular again, because it seems like that the more abstract, the more interesting, the more deeply thoughtful things are, whether it's music or cinema or whatever, is just less popular, and that kind of sucks.
I think it's an interesting moment. I don't know if you happened to watch the Super Bowl yesterday or catch the backlash against the halftime show, which was Kendrick Lamar, which
I
Joey,
didn't
I don't
see
know.
it. I
Yeah.
didn't see it, but I was talking to my wife about it this morning because I read some of the posts on Facebook that I saw, and I'm definitely in an echo chamber of like super liberal, lefty people, and so they were kind of saying, it's only these, white racist assholes that are against it or whatever. I didn't see it, but I saw the general synopsis of it, and yeah, it sounded like pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Joey, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this too, given that you were just sort of talking about this as a parallel from both the genre that Trevor works in, but also the sort of the hip hop genre then as well. I think Lamar gets a lot of credit and a lot of run for being, relatively pushing the boundaries, especially when it comes to sort of lyrics and rhymes and making something that's slightly more complex and slightly different than what hip hop had been putting out for the last decade. He's rightly sort of risen to the top of the heap for a certain number of reasons. But this performance, which I enjoyed, I mean, very different for a Super Bowl halftime show, which is always usually some sort of kind of mashup of greatest hits and is this kind of medley environment with usually just like a sort of extraordinary, dance show, visuals of one sort of another. And this was like a relatively sort of subdued. I mean, there's certainly like a large choreographed performance, but a relatively sort of subdued visual performance when it came down to what you were seeing at the Super Bowl. And I kind of enjoyed it. And, I heard the aftermath as well, a bunch of whole people saying like, what was that? And a bunch of, white racists who don't understand hip hop. And so, and even I can't understand half the lyrics that are being rapped at any given time when he's out there on the stage. But I thought it was enjoyable. Like I watched the whole thing with my kids and, it was like, cool. That was Lamar. And is he going to rap, not like us? And, is it going to extend this like, beef that he's got with Drake and, onto the stage of 100 million people, which he ends up doing. And I was sort of like, this is kind of an interesting moment of these like performers that are involved in these legal battles about reputation and, the creation of art in the furthering of one's sort of commitments to one's own reputation or against somebody else's reputation. I was sort of down with it. And, and the fact that it seemed so illegible to a large group of people, I think this is the point to what you were saying, Trevor. It's like that there were a whole bunch of people who was like, that didn't seem as fun as it could be, or it wasn't as entertaining as I kind of would hoped it would be. And thus my first reaction is to say, oh, I didn't like it and that was garbage, right? Like that it's only on the people are only able to gauge, was I entertained or was I not entertained as the sole spectrum of their qualitative judgment. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that seems to be a
like
muscle that's sort of overexercised.
Yeah, I heard there was kind of a political aspect to it as well, but I haven't quite. I'm going to watch it. I'm interested to see it. I'm going to watch it later. I honestly didn't even know it was Super Bowl Sunday because I'm so out of the loop on that.
No, listen, I mean, I get it.
On Facebook, they're like, "Oh, who's watching the game today?" And I was like, "Oh shit, it's Super Bowl day."
Yeah.
I'm just not a football fan. That's really what it is. But I'm going to watch it because I'm interested to see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, which makes it interesting, right? Like it's like it's a cultural product, other than the football game itself, which is not merely about, or at least to a certain extent, there were some decisions that were being made that were not about merely trying to entertain an audience of 100 million people, right? There was some other set of decisions being made.
I think that's great and that's awesome. I actually, I've to be perfectly honest, you could put on, 10 rap songs right now and ask me which one is Kendrick Lamar and I wouldn't know because I've never listened to his music and that's probably something I should just go and listen to because, people say it's good. So I will check it out. But I read some things that, there was a lot in it about, Black culture and about the struggles of Black culture and like kind of subliminally put in there and even not so subliminally put in there. And then there was, people were saying, oh, these, right wing, white people, are mad about it or whatever, and this and that. And how like, well, 50 something % of all the players in the NFL are Black guys, and then look at basketball and stuff. And I've always seen sports as kind of like this amazing bridge that allows people to come together regardless of their race and helps people get past racism and stuff, because how can you be a basketball fan and be a white racist guy? You know what I mean? Like, it's like where does those things just don't compute to me, or any sport in America, And so I've always thought of sports. A lot of people are like, oh, sports are stupid, whatever. I've always thought of sports as this amazing thing to kind of get past those boundaries that people have and help eliminate racism. So when I see any sort of racist things come out of a football halftime show or something like that, I'm just like, oh my God, like these people just have way too much of a platform to get their voices heard, and that's the downside of social media and stuff, right? Is that everyone has their little podium now. And, you wouldn't even have known that there were some white racist assholes complaining about a Super Bowl show in 1993 two, like nobody would have given them a platform. They would have been complaining on their porch in front of their house with their dirty tank top on, like, and nobody would have given a shit about these dumbasses. And now they have a voice. And so everybody's like, oh my God, these racists have this to say. Like, oh my God, who cares what these racist assholes have to say? Like they're just so stupid and dumb, like who cares what they have to say? But obviously we live in a different world now where you end up knowing what they all have to say about something, and it's super annoying and whatever. But I'm gonna check it out later because I'm interested to see what it was.
I'm going to share my quick thought before we move into what we call the more opinion segment. But I had so many people try to get me into Kendrick Lamar, and they always go, let me put on this song. Let me put on this song. And I don't get it. Like, honestly, I feel free to flame my inbox with like hate mail, but I don't understand what is so cool about Kendrick Lamar. I've had multiple people play actual tracks when I was like in the car and had nothing better to do than to pay attention. And I was like, I don't see it. I really don't understand what
nobody is required to like anything and be into anything, so that's fine. Sometimes it just, something can be really great to others. I mean, it happens to me more often than not. I would say personally, I don't like 95% of music that I hear, so it's just how it goes. But
Not Like Us is a banger of song. It's good.
I'll have to check it out. I mean, I saw the performance yesterday. I thought I was entertained by it at first. Then it felt like you said, Jonathan, wasn't this sort of like medley of hits, and I wouldn't even know if it was because I don't know any of his hits. But by the end, it felt like it was just one really long song. Like it was just kind of went on for a long time with like not much change, which for me,
and there was
like one of my DJ sets.
Exactly. Is getting into it was a crossover psychedelic trance hip hop music. It felt like there was a story that was trying to be told. I'm just not sure that it maybe I wasn't the audience for it, but there was some sort of story that he was trying to tell that was not simply a story about entertainment, and also just not a story about his own rise to power and fame. And there was more to it, which again, I think maybe to your point was the fact that makes it more interesting, but it also makes it puts up a block to people who are not interested in being confronted with something that's got some ambiguity to it, especially when their expectation is to be entertained, right? And I think that is one of the great challenges that you were sort of describing in terms of this conflict between what is otherwise simply merely fun and 99% dumb versus something that actually has layers of product to it, or has layers of, I don't want to say meaning because that sounds cliches, but layers to what the actual piece of culture, piece of art that it is that someone is making has, right? And if it has those multiple layers, chances are there's going to be some contradiction, there's going to be some ambiguity to it, which gives it a way of persisting in one's mind as of interest versus it just sort of like completely, coming, being consumed like a hit of sugar, and it's gone in 20 minutes and you don't even remember that that was something that you consumed, right? So
it's not a good platform for deep listening. Most people, I was at a bar, there was like all kinds of noise around me, like, whatever the deeper narrative was there, like I tried to listen to the lyrics and you really can't make out what he's saying in any real meaningful way. And it's not like
everyone, could you all be quiet?
And on top of that,
this art piece.
I'm sure it's pre-recorded because the Super Bowl usually is, but at any rate, it was still very difficult to understand what he was saying, even without the noise, right? It's like, it's a live performance, and even if they did pre-record it, there's a certain level of it not being as easy to hear as on an album or when you can stop and check it out. But anyways, we have to jump to the next segment.
The headline that I saw was like Kendrick Lamar's bell bottoms steal the show, and I was like, yep, there it is right now. Like the pants he's wearing is what matters here.
That's right. That definitely will be this like fashion thing that now we have to live with for another 18 months. It's like boot cut jeans, long boot cut jeans.
I noticed the pants. Like
Everybody.
They were part of the show. Like
everybody knows the pants.
Yeah. All right, so we got to jump into the more opinion segment here, Trevor. We usually like to ask 3 questions that are not about your own projects. Well, sort of. And we will fire that off with the first one, which is if somebody gave you $10 million in funding for a new project or enterprise that could not be one of your existing projects. And you can't just keep the money and use it to support whatever it is you're doing. Like, you have to use it to start something new, either, like something ambitious. What would you like to bring into the world if you had $10 million?
I'd help animals probably, and homeless people, poor people. Yeah.
Sort of start a foundation kind of thing.
Rescue every freaking dog on the streets of Guatemala and like hire people to like just pet them all the time and feed them and shit. Probably do that in a bunch of other places too. Just help animals and poor people.
I was just out in Mitla on the outskirts of Oaxaca City, and never seen so many stray dogs in my life. So lots of work to be done there. Question number 2. Is there a person or project that you are aware of in the cultural sector? It doesn't have to be music, but it certainly can be, that you are really inspired by, or somebody you would really admire that you want to bring attention to what they're doing?
That's a good question. I'm often so consumed with everything that I have to do and my own little selfish life that I don't often pay attention to enough things that are happening in the world and enough of what people are doing. Nobody comes to mind off of that offhand. I think locally I get inspired by people who are just helping people and doing stuff to help people and animals that aren't being helped. I don't really have anybody in particular, like on a global scale, that I think is doing something. I'm sure there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of them. I should probably pay attention more so I can answer a question like that next time.
We used to send that was the only question we would give our guests in advance, so we kind of fucked you on that one. All right, last question in the more opinion segment, and then we'll wrap it up. If you could steal any work of art or cultural artifact from around the world you have only for yourself, it's stolen, so only you and your wife could really know about it. It's got to be tucked away at your place, but it's only for your personal enjoyment. There's no monetary value. You can never sell it. What piece of art or cultural artifact would you love to have for yourself?
Dude, I want one of those like temple, like cathedrals in Iran that you see photos of. They're like super crazy psychedelic. Like, I don't even know where they are, but I think they're in Iran mostly, and they're in like old Muslim countries or Persian countries.
You're talking about like a mosque or something?
Yeah, like one of those old mosques, but like the ones that are just like crazy psychedelic, all the colors. You've had to have seen photos of them online. I want one of those of my own. And I'll invite some friends over sometimes, because we're gonna, get super high and trip hard, and we're gonna just be in there and play crazy music. I want one of those. I don't know where I'm gonna tuck that away, but that's what I want.
Right. You just enjoy it just before the police come storming in, because there's no way to hide it.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. You just need some. I mean, if one of these disappeared and ended up, in the forest in Guatemala, it'd take a long time for anybody to come trying to find it.
Yeah, we'll cover it in jungle.
All right, Treavor, thank you for joining us on the MO podcast. After having lived with you for a number of years, I still didn't know more than half of these things. So it was a fun conversation.
Right on. Well, come hang out in Guatemala sometime.
Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah, would love to. Thanks, Trevor. Bye.
Right. Have a good one. Take care, guys. Thank you.